Thank you so much. And first of all, thank you to the Institute for Sustainable Energy for putting on this very, very important event. I'm so glad to be here with everybody today because we all share similar goals. We want our municipalities, our state, our world to be more sustainable. But what does that mean? What does sustainability mean? It can mean a number of different things. It can mean resilience, which itself has a number of meanings, from being able to withstand flooding events and extreme weather events to responding to public health emergencies. It can mean employing climate mitigation measures, investing in green energy or transit-oriented development, or it could mean closing the achievement gap in the school system. And many of these measurements of sustainability can indeed be explored and implemented on the municipal level. That's why, as chair of the legislature's Environment Committee, I have pushed for the state to explore ways that we can encourage our municipalities to become more sustainable and engage in sustainability actions. And one way would be to develop a sustainable community rating system akin to Sustainable Jersey. And that's been such a successful program for the state of New Jersey. I'm very excited that we have some folks who can share their experiences from that program here, speaking with you later today. They've been so deeply involved and have seen great successes in their communities. And in Connecticut, we really need to look at models like that, like Sustainable Jersey and New Jersey, to glean what we can from what they've done that's been successful, and they've done a lot that's been successful. But when I think about sustainability in terms of a rating system, I recognize that Connecticut has some uniqueness, and I like to think about sustainability in a couple different ways. One of that is equity in measurement, right? We want to make sure that towns can use their own unique characteristics to become more sustainable. West Hartford is going to do something much different than the city of Bridgeport will do. Greenwich is going to do something much different than Goshen will do. So we want to make sure that when we're thinking about how to measure sustainability, we're thinking about those differences. And I also think about equity of opportunity. We want to make sure that the towns who don't necessarily have the resources or technical expertise are able to engage in sustainable actions when they have leaders in their communities that want to do so. But we're joined here by many leaders in sustainability and in your own municipalities. I know that Commissioner Klee appreciates the leadership at this level, and he's been a leader himself on the state level too, whether that be through reorganizing Connecticut's recycling structure, which you heard a little bit about this morning, or his work with CIRCA, which is the Connecticut Institute for Resilience and Climate Adaptation, which can help with some of that technical expertise on the municipal level and the ability to find resources to adapt to climate change and sea level rise and everything else that comes with the challenges of a changing climate. So without further ado, I'm very happy to introduce Commissioner Rob Klee.
James, don't go too far away. So anytime I do an event with Lynn Stoddard, I have to do a selfie at some point in the thing. So I was wondering if you would join me in one for a selfie with the folks. If everyone behind can sort of wave and say hi. So this is a bearded selfie as well. This is a new thing for me. I'm taking after James. So Representative Albus. I wanted to thank you for everything that you do in the General Assembly, the chair of the Environment Committee. That's worth a big round. As a representative of our agency, we all appreciate all that you do each and every day at the General Assembly, fighting for the causes that we believe in and working closely with us on our environment agenda, our climate agenda, and where we can also merging into the energy agenda as well. And you've been a great leader on all those fronts, and really it's someone fun to work with. So I've been enjoying the hell out of it. So and I look forward to doing more of it too. So and to the folks here, the Institute for Sustainable Energy, the Tremaine Foundation, the Common Sense Fund, the Hampshire Foundation, and all my deep staff, which I see quite a few of you in the room here. Thank you for having me. It's a thrill to be here. And really talking about something that is the fundamental issue of our time. And this is really why I am so excited that I get to wake up every morning and do the work I do, is to tackle these sorts of issues. I'm always thrilled to be with municipal officials, and I see a lot of familiar faces in the room, and I'm really glad about that, and folks who are on the front lines doing some incredible work. And it was great to hear a bit from the folks on the recycling front, which is near and dear to my heart. Though I do have a question for West Hartford. If you could track and see how the elementary school kids do versus the high school kids in actually listening. So I have an 8-year-old and a third grader and a 5-year-old kindergartner. The 8-year-old probably listens. The 5-year-old, I don't know so much. He's not, listening is not yet his strong suit. Or following directions, that might be a better thing. So I'd love to see the data from that. But municipalities are our key partners on all fronts on the environment, from the natural resources to outdoor recreation to public health, and to ensuring that we have the high quality of life in our state that people in Connecticut, the reason we live here, the reason we want to be here, the reason I've been here now for 37 years almost in Connecticut. We work with you across the board on water quality issues, on wastewater treatment, protecting open space. And these activities that we do in concert with our municipalities really pay great dividends for our state. This, though, is a gathering about climate and sustainability, and this is one more aspect of our mutual sort of cooperation that needs to be integral to the things we're doing together at the state level, the local level, and the federal level. Climate change is real. It is happening. I'm proud to be a commissioner who can say that and to say that it is human-induced climate change, and this is the challenge of our times. We see it here in Connecticut. We feel it in Connecticut. We see it in the warming waters of Long Island Sound, where our fisheries experts at our agency wonder whether we're a New England fishery anymore, or we're really more mid-Atlantic. The waters and the composition of our sound have changed. We no longer have the cold water species, the winter flounder, the lobster. We now have blue crab. Some people don't mind catching a few blue crab, but that is a fundamental change in the way that our relationship with the Long Island Sound exists. We see it in new insects, invasive species, and we see it in the destructive force of the recent storms that have so greatly impacted our municipalities throughout the state, both along the coast and in our inland floodplains. And you see it too. You see it in the strains of your infrastructure, the flooding that's created by our more frequent and intense rainstorms, the storm of, I think, a few days ago, where we now get 4 inches of rain in a day that used to be spread over the course of a month. Our cities and towns weren't designed to handle that dramatic change in our pattern, which is a direct result of climate change. We also have a moral imperative to act for the sake of our planet and future generations. And this is a very interesting time to be talking about that. I was listening to NPR on the ride up talking about the Pope's visit to the United States and the Pope's encyclical with that in mind. It's going to be interesting where he's said that, as of the vast majority of climate scientists, that global warming in recent decades is due to human activity and that there are grave implications from this, environmental, social, political, and we're already seeing that here. And I can't wait to see what he has to say next week. It is the critical issue of our time. I've mentioned my 2 young sons. I don't want to leave a legacy of flooding and famine and disease and the conflicts that are potentially a result of climate change. That's not the legacy I want to leave to their generation. So what are we doing here in Connecticut about it? How can we help? How can we work together to address this sort of fundamental moral and scientific and political challenge of our time? Well, we can build on a strong foundation of things we've done here in Connecticut over the years. We've adopted a Global Warming Solutions Act in 2008. It was approved by the General Assembly, signed into law by Governor Rell. It was one of the most forward-thinking pieces of legislation, of climate legislation, developed by any state in our nation at the time. It committed Connecticut to act in accordance with the broad consensus that we need to keep the Earth's climate from warming more than 2 degrees centigrade. And to do our part, we formally committed to specific reduction goals, 10% below 1990 levels by 2020, 80% below 2001 levels by 2050. And the governor just last week over in California reaffirmed our commitment. Yet again, he does it every time he speaks, actually. He reaffirms our commitment to 80% by 2050, and I'll talk a little bit more. He's also emboldened our Governor's Council on Climate Change to figure out how to get from now until to 2050 through interim targets and goals. Connecticut is among a handful of U.S. states and a considerable number of countries that have adopted these aggressive emission reduction targets. And good news is we're already partway there. Actions we've already taken means that we're now about 10.5% below 1990 levels. So we've achieved our 2020 goal ahead of time. Our per capita emissions are down 18%. Our greenhouse gases per unit of state domestic product, or our GDP equivalent, is down 37%. But there's a long way to go from where we are now to 2050. And folks in the Governor's Council on Climate Change, the numbers are pretty dramatic. We're at about 40 million metric tons per year right now. By 2050, we have to be about 9. 40 million tons to 9, and that's in 35 years. That requires dramatic changes in how we approach almost everything we do, which is also, we had a meeting last night of one of the data and metrics analysis group of the Governor's Council on Climate Change, and there was a sense in the room of holy cow. There's probably another word I could use instead of cow, but this is a family audience. But there's also a sense in the room that it is possible with the folks that we have thinking about this, working on this, and caring deeply about these issues that, yeah, we can get it done. It's a big lift, but it's something that we can get done. So the Governor's Council on Climate Change, we called the GC3. It grew out of the previous sort of steering committee on climate change, which really was set the early agenda and develop initial actions. This new council came to life on Earth Day 2015 through an executive order from Governor Malloy, and it's charged with examining the effectiveness of existing policies and regulations designed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and identifying those new strategies that will meet our targets and make the state more resilient, and is charged with setting interim targets and goals, which we're now probably coming together around 2030 goals, 2040 goals, and then the ultimate 2050 goal that's already in statute. There are 15 different people appointed by the governor. There are 8 state agencies. There are private companies. There are non-governmental organizations, quasi-governmental organizations. We tried to expand on the former committee to really bring in those voices from across Connecticut that are necessary to get this done. We can't do it just as state agencies. We need to have our leaders in the nonprofit world, our leaders in the business world, labor leaders, religious leaders, all thinking about this, all working together towards this common goal. And that's really the spirit of the new Governor's Council on Climate Change. And I'm proud to serve as the chair of the council. So these interim targets, we're going to take a look at, the policies, the regulations, and action to get us to that 80% by 2050, because you can't wait till 2046 to try to solve it all in the last 4 years. You really need to set out those key milestones and markers along the way that'll get you to where you want to go. State agencies alone can't do it. We need to have, and particularly the type of transformational change that's needed. So that's, again, why we're engaging, and we're going to continue to engage stakeholders from around Connecticut. And that's really one of the other sort of big charges of the council, is to develop those stakeholder engagement networks. And hopefully those networks will include the folks on your municipal energy task forces and in your public works departments and in your municipal leaders as well. We need the input of those folks who are there on the ground each and every day thinking about these issues, being creative about these issues, and finding solutions in one town that we can replicate in others. And you've been doing a lot, and it's really dramatic, the potential that municipalities have to change things. You do have, well, you've been doing a lot. Your operations also generate a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. You are actually large users of energy, materials, water, and the like, and fossil fuels. So there's plenty of opportunity, as we say in sort of lean parlance instead of problems. Municipalities can really drive carbon behavior and shape carbon behavior amongst your residents. And I'll give you a few examples. If your sidewalks are in good repair, people will want to walk more. If you have bike lanes and bike paths, people will tend to bike more. If you are a community that participates in the Solarize campaign or a solar challenge, you're going to have more solar on your rooftops. If you have forward-looking zoning rules and get more sustainable development or more transit-oriented development. If you have a lot of trees and you have an active tree planting initiative in your town, people use less air conditioning in the summer. If there are charging stations, people will actually go out and buy electric cars and use them in your town. The list can go on and on. There's transit-oriented development, the community-scale solar, promoting ride sharings, and composting, recycling, all of which can have a positive impact on our climate, on our planet, and on your local community, making it a better place to live, work, and raise a family. And it's that strengthening of our communities through sustainable development, through investments in these in alternative technologies, in innovation, and in community strengthening systems that's really going to change those patterns and develop a culture that's really excited to be part of this future. You're also a key part in shaping the decisions of your businesses within your communities, particularly your small businesses, your local businesses. And that's a whole area where we're working hard as our department to find tools and techniques that can help our smaller businesses take advantage of efficiency programs or new renewables. And we work closely with the Connecticut Green Bank to develop financing tools and options, including our CPACE program, our Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy, which I know many of the communities here in this room are participants in, that are really driving efficiency and renewables at scale and really spreading them across the state through the help of our partners in municipalities, making it easier for those businesses in your town to take advantage of lower cost and cleaner energy. You're well positioned to give that message, and you also have a whole lot of things under your own roof, so to speak, or you have a lot of roofs, which, depending if you're a facilities person, you care a lot about the roofs and the boilers and whatnot. But those municipal operations are great laboratories and places to demonstrate and lead by example in efficiency and renewables. And I'm always thrilled to go and both in municipal institutions and actually in nonprofit and religious institutions. I'm always thrilled when I get to go and cut a ribbon on a solar array at a school or at a community center like I was in Woodbridge just a few weeks ago, where that's going to be a conversation piece, where you're interacting with people and they see solar on the rooftop or solar carports or kids in their school, and it becomes more mainstream and something that is attainable and easy. And I challenge you actually to do what I did to the JCC had their summer camp in Woodbridge. The kids came over to hear the boring adults talk. But I challenged all the kids in the audience to go home and ask their parents why they don't have solar on their roof or why they don't have LED light bulbs and why they're not composting at home. And I think I got a few of the kids to actually go home. And I also told them to go home and ask your parents for a new electric vehicle. So they had a lot of fun with that one. But that is actually a part of the spirit and the real opportunity in municipalities because of the numbers of people that interact with your buildings, with your offices, with your schools, with your facilities. The people coming through there are potential people, as we were hearing about before, that you can educate, you can motivate, you can get excited about these sorts of initiatives. So the bottom line is that you are ideally positioned to really reinforce the climate initiatives that are the high-level things at the federal and state level. It comes down to the very local level where people viscerally experience it, and that's really where municipalities sit. So what I'm going to, I do want to have at least a little dose of reality. Connecticut is not going to solve the global climate crisis on our own. I know that, and I get that. But what Connecticut can do and has done is demonstrate what is possible and create models that are replicable elsewhere and demonstrate that you can participate in the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. You can reduce our power sector emissions 40% and still grow our economy by 8%. You can have a cap-and-trade system or a cap-and-invest system that invested $137 million here in Connecticut alone, $1 billion for the Reggie region around the New England and Mid-Atlantic states, and those are investments in people and jobs in our local communities who are doing HVAC installations, who are doing solar installations. It's really, again, demonstrating at a local level in a state and a municipality that things can actually get done with people working together and coming together, and you get out of the whole sort of Washington partisan gridlock stuff. And that's really what's exciting for me. And it's something that I think Gina McCarthy, who is formerly a DEP commissioner, brought a lot of those ideas to Washington, has been fighting hard as hell to get them passed and get them through. And we support her tremendously in the work that she's been doing. But it's been fascinating to sort of see the things that she's been taking from her experience in Connecticut and trying to demonstrate on the national stage as a model of what is possible. Here in Connecticut, we've also, in addition to participation in RGGI, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, we have an expanded focus on energy efficiency, in renewables, fuel switching, combined heat and power, zero-emission vehicles. We're investing in public transit, in transit-oriented development. Thank you, Lynn. We have our 60% diversion recycling rate. There is a long list of things that we're doing here. It is an all-of-the-above strategy because we've been looking at the numbers for 80% by 2050. It is really all of the above. You have to do all of these things. We are doing them in a smart fashion. We're doing them in stepwise fashion. We're taking on the things that are most effective and efficient and cost-effective early, but setting the framework, and we're really working on that in the Council on Climate Change, of those steps to make sure all those steps are all heading in the right direction and they can build on one another. The other sort of big area, which Representative Albus alluded to, is that we also need to be realistic about the unavoidable impacts of climate change, which we are already feeling. And that requires us to focus on adaptation and land use, shoreline preservation, flood and storm surge protections, resilient engineering, and then the policy and financing tools that are needed to actually enable municipalities to make those long-term investments to make a more resilient community. We're doing that in a great new partnership with UConn that James mentioned, CIRCA, the Institute for Resilience and Climate Adaptation. I see my CIRCA folks here. There are a couple, Rebecca French is over there, and I think there might be one, hey, Jessica, in the back. Go up and talk to them because this is really where I'm actually excited about getting UConn out of the ivory tower and actually down in the dirt and in the mud and in the muck in the municipalities and being there to actually provide solutions to the questions and the challenges and the problems that you have. They have, I'll say, they have funding opportunity, they have grant, they have some money, they have some, but they also have this expertise, and expertise across their natural systems, their engineering school, but also the social scientists, the lawyers too, the policy folks who can help you craft things that fit in your 169 different towns worth of fabric. What makes sense for a community like yours when it comes to resiliency? And that's incredibly exciting. So I'll kind of close and hopefully we have some time for questions, which is great. By letting you rest assured that climate change, mitigation, and adaptation is the #1 priority of DEEP. It is why we were created, and the merger of energy and environment, the two sides of the same coin. Understanding the decisions you make in one sphere directly impacts our environment. Is that when we get around the table are the breadth of the folks in our agency who can come at these problems from unique perspectives and different perspectives, the engineering, the technical, the scientific perspectives on energy folks who understand energy markets, sitting next to the fish guy who cares about the fish in Long Island Sound, or if we're talking about small-scale hydro, how we're going to make sure we have sustainable fish passage and whatnot. And it's those things that make me excited to come to work in each and every day, to have that sort of passionate, committed group of folks who are really working hard to really wrestle with these challenges and come up with some unique opportunities. We're not going to be successful, though, without our towns and cities as partners along the way, with your input, with your knowledge, with your experience really driving us forward and really helping us sort of shape the agenda for the coming year. So this is one of those really great sort of sessions where you get to hear and learn about what your friends and colleagues in the municipal world are doing, see what there are best practices that you can beg, borrow, and steal from, and learn about the potential to do even more in your communities. So I'm thrilled, and all the members of the Governor's Council on Climate Change are thrilled to work with you and really work with you on the challenges that you're facing. And that's kind of where I'll close my sort of formal remarks and kind of open up to the audience to sort of ask me questions and push us as a council of what do you want to see from us? How can we, what are the resources that you're lacking other than money, which I know for everyone could use more money. But what tools might you need? Are there ways that we can highlight or promote the things that you're doing, or the ways that you can learn from other municipalities? Can we be a facilitator in the exchange of information? How can we get your energy task forces focused on climate change? Is that something you're interested in or not, or how many of them already are? I'd love to hear that sort of feedback as well. So I'll just close by saying thrilled to be here and thrilled to be in a state where we're really doing some amazing things on climate change and sustainability, and I'm thrilled I get to work with all of your towns and municipalities each and every day. So thank you.
If folks have questions, if you could please come up to the mic. Thank you.
And while people are coming up, I'll say hi to Representative Steinberg, who I see in the back. Shana Tova. Hope you had a nice holiday. I last saw Representative Steinberg down in Westport, and Westport is one of our leading folks on electric vehicles and charging stations, and really jumped in whole hog on solar as well down there. So good to see you, Representative. Yes.
Thank you. A couple of months or so ago, my husband and I attended a meeting of the task force, the governor's task force. And I recall that the commissioner of insurance was present, and I understand that a major focus is on reducing emissions. My background is in social welfare. So I would like to suggest that the commissioner of the Department of Public Health or people from Yukon Health Center be a part of this, because my understanding is that there is no aspect of human life that will not be affected by climate change. Last week or a couple weeks ago in my town of Mansfield, the schools were closed for several hours or a day. I wasn't in town at that time because of the heat. Because of the heat, which we know will have cascading effects on the very young, the very old. And this came to me because the physician I see a nurse practitioner, and she's getting her doctorate at UConn in policy. And she said she hasn't had anything come up in her curricula that have anything to do with climate change. And I'm wondering what the nursing schools are teaching. I think this is a very, very important, not just because of pandemics, but because of our own deer ticks right here in Connecticut. And I think this is a very important aspect that needs to be included in the overall picture.
Thank you, and I do share your perspective as well. Public health we work with on quite a number of issues. Water being the first and foremost, which water is also has plenty of direct links to both climate and a sort of a stressed climate world puts stress or pressure on our water systems. Increased storm surge or flooding events can overwhelm water systems, but it also water movement is also a big energy driver as well. The public health implications, though, of through increased heat waves, of increased bad air days, the co-benefits you can actually get from reducing your greenhouse gas emissions also reduces local air pollution, criteria air pollution. We're making all those connections, and that's part of actually how we try to tell the story of why these investments have multiple benefits that kind of spill into all parts of our lives. But I do take it as a good sort of push in the direction to keep public health engaged more and engaging the health community. I think that's something for the Yukon folks to think about. We're actually going in early October actually to talk to the deans of all of Yukon. So I'll be sure, I'm looking at Rebecca, making sure that my notes when I'm there, I will push them to say this should be part of the curriculum or the learning at UConn's various sort of campuses, that there is And it's not just a global problem or a developing world problem, where there are definitely climate refugees and drought-stricken places and whatnot, but it does have impacts even here in Connecticut. And your example of with 2 young boys in school, it was hot and those heat waves caused stress even in our local communities. So thank you.
Very, very quickly, I'll comment on that question if I could.
Sure.
We went to an Eversource community outreach meeting, and they actually have 2 programs where they will train teachers in environmental curricula. And if you don't have anybody you can send to that, they'll actually come to your classroom. So Eversource does have a resource. But my question for you, Commissioner, is as you work on the metrics to track climate change, I would ask, sort of on bended knee, but I'm too tall, that you drive those metrics down to the municipal level so that they're at a level where we can interact with them. Because we see the chart, but we know we're only one of 169 entities in that chart. So drive it down to us.
No, it's a great idea and a great point. And I'll borrow from some of the business school folks. I almost said business fools, but that would have been a Freudian. But that you only manage what you measure. And having that level of data down to a municipal scale, I think, will be valuable. And valuable in a number of different, not only will it help you and your municipality sort of look and track your progress over time, it'll allow friendly, good, healthy competition between municipalities that can drive folks to want to keep up with their neighbors or their cohort. Metrics and measurement is one of the key sort of questions for the Governor's Council on climate change, how we make sure we get the right metrics, how we have them standardized, and some real tricky and sort of interesting questions of how, I like the idea of bringing them down to the local level, but how do our metrics and measures work in a region, particularly in a regional electric grid? We are one of 8 New England states, so we need to make sure we're thinking creatively about how we're measuring things, that it also intersects well with our neighboring states. But great question.
Hi, I'm actually from Westport, Connecticut, and we are now called the Green Task Force. We took the energy out of it because of the need to incorporate all aspects of sustainability.
That's great to hear.
And we've also set a vision of net zero by 2050. Wish us luck. And
Good luck.
I guess but we're focusing mostly at this point on wastewater and transportation. And obviously transportation having the greenhouse gas effect. That area is the one that I'm having the most trouble figuring out where we're going to go with it. It's, sort of your division because of the greenhouse gas, but it's also Department of Transportation. And I just would ask for any guidance that you and your affiliates can help us with, because it's a big problem for us.
But no, I appreciate the question and the comment. Our transportation sector is 42% of our greenhouse gas emissions in the state. It is the largest sector by far. You combine buildings, and so residential and commercial buildings together, you get 25%. The power sector is like 22, 20 something. I'm getting like hand signals, which I'm 20-ish%. But so almost half of it is transportation. And that is actually one of the biggest challenges for us, is that we have fewer levers as a state over the vehicles that are traveling on our roads. California happens to have the one lever that's not the federal lever on vehicles. So we're part of an 8-state memorandum of understanding with California to adopt their vehicle standards. So when they put into California's regulations that the auto dealers must sell X number of electric vehicles, zero-emission vehicles, we can piggyback on that and say, us too. So we're actually now in this strange sort of place where we're actually advocating in California's legislative and administrative process to make sure we get electric vehicles and to get the cleaner vehicles that we want. And that's probably more likely to be successful than advocating at the federal government right now, which is fascinating and a bit odd. But on transportation, and I know Westport and the whole sort of Metro North corridor has been doing great things on increasing ridership on Metro North, on making those connections where you can actually get to the rail station through bike or other public transit options. And those are the sorts of things that we're pushing. At DOT, we actually, for the first time, I think in Connecticut's history, have a rail guy as the head of the DOT instead of a road guy. So he gets the importance of transit and mass transit, and has been really sort of proud of the busway and our first bus rapid transit system that came into being. So it's great having conversations with DOT about these issues. They get it. It's definitely not the old way where apparently DEP commissioners and DOT commissioners used to write letters to one another and had very sort of, I pick up the phone and call Jim, and so we can talk about these. On electric vehicles, we have enough charging stations now that you're never more than 20 minutes from a charging station anywhere in Connecticut. We have our $3,000 cheaper rebate out there. It's still going strong. We still have a few 100,000. So act now. Go. The prices are so low, it's insane down at the car dealerships. So there's. I do sometimes feel like I'm selling cars, and it's through all of these sorts of measures added up that we're going to chip away at transportation. But we are learning along with you on and really trying to find those really innovative options on transit. And we're looking far and wide to the Netherlands, to California, to British Columbia for things that may work elsewhere. But that's going to be our biggest part of this challenge.
Commissioner Klee, thanks for coming and joining us today. In regards to waste management and the solid waste management plan.
This is near and dear to my heart.
And talking back what you're referring to in regards to leading us through. My hope as a solid waste management authority, I don't have a lot of authority. And I would like to see that the state be a leader. No one wants to be a bad guy. But we need more enforcement, we need to be empowered to be able to enforce some of the recycling laws. And I'd like to see the state be more of a leader in enforcing some of the laws that need to take place at a local level. And I'd also like to see within the new state solid waste management plan that we incorporate some of that, incorporate enforcement, incorporate education, adding policies for pay-as-you-throw. If the state does it, we're more apt to be able to utilize that at a local level.
No, and it's a great point, and I appreciate that this is one of the challenges of our agency and an agency of our size, that we have limited resources, but enforcement in solid waste is where I'm going to be directing those resources, because this is a big issue. This is a big push. Getting from 30% to 60% in 10 years is not going to be easy and can't be done without all the carrots and sticks and tools that we have at our disposal. And our waste team has been going crazy in a good way, developing these innovative policies, seeing what's out there, seeing cities like Seattle and San Francisco that are at 80-90% diversion rates. So it is possible. And the question is, what are the right combinations of enforcement tools and incentive tools that get people to change fundamental behavior? Waste is always a behavior, it's a decision, what you're going to do with this. Where does it go? And not easy to have that change. So you need enforcement, but you also need the softer things, the education, the outreach, the getting my kids to do it, and they're having their kids push their learning up to parents and whatnot. But enforcement is going to be a big part, particularly as we're rolling out new organics laws and other things on the commercial industrial side as well. Yeah.
It's, of course, very nice and very useful to have the various states trying to implement measures against climate change. But my question is, what influence do the states, particularly Connecticut, have upon the federal government? Because it's the federal government which is also very interested in making agreements and whatnot, but how can you, as a Connecticut authority, influence the federal government to provide more support? What can you do?
It's a great question, and it's one of our challenges in sort of managing upward from a relatively small New England state. We joined together in coalitions, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. It's 10 states. It's Maryland to Maine. It includes New York, sort of big players. So your voice gets amplified in groups that are larger, though Connecticut, Katie Dykes, our deputy for energy, is the chair of RGGI, and has been a strong voice advocating for that greenhouse gas emissions reductions on the power sector. But even as there's now an emerging sort of group of what are called subnational governments, California, Quebec, Ontario, some of the Vermont and New York and Connecticut, that are, when you add them up, they actually look like larger than most countries when you start adding, particularly when you add California and New York into the mix. And they've been becoming more active in these global, negotiations and frameworks with a sort of delicate balance that, we don't have a Department of State. We can't, engage in sort of international negotiations directly, although California sort of does, which is always makes, they are different over in California. But there are places where we make our voices heard that usually sort of in pushing that there are solutions, there are options, there are things that work, a balance to the very sort of negative things that you sometimes hear from folks in other states who talk about the economy that's going to be obliterated or the grid that won't be reliable, when in fact, we can do these things and still have a robust economy, reliable electric services, and lower greenhouse gas emissions. So it's using our pulpits and our platforms wherever we can in those other fora, and be that the Climate Summit of the Americas, or in Climate Week in New York, or in these other places, standing up as a subnational group saying, yes, this is possible, it can be done, and we have examples of successes. So, Lynn, that's good? Time's up?
Yep. Thank you so much.
All right. Pleasure. Thank you.